Building this Grand Prix 3D car. It's been lots of fun and I'm still looking forward to a lot more fun. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies and welcome to part 11 of the Grand Prix 3D build. Now I've got bits here. This is where we're at with the engine build. So whole engines together, rear suspensions all working. You see, oh that's pretty groovy. Rear shocks are pretty good. You can see there. All right, and then we're going to be doing the gearbox, which fits into here just like on the real F1 car. So it's been quite an enjoyable build so far. You've got all the components where you would expect it to be in a scale model build. And then the other great thing is it's going to be drivable. So let's pop this down here. So we've got the gearbox components here, already done the diff. All right, so this is the lock diff, which is recommended for low traction. And then we've got an actual differential, so you can swap in and out. Now I've decided to build this one just so you can see the whole build sequence. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is getting the rest of the gearbox together. All right, so let's go to our manual here. All right, so this is a solid axle, which we've already worked on. All right, so that's that, and we're up to step 5, which is the outdrives. Okay, so we've got these are the sliding drive shafts that we took out from the drive shafts here. Now we need those. We've got these outdrives here. We'll need some screws, so 2x4s. Got my ruler here. It's handy to have a ruler around. 2x4s. They're going to be little stumpies. Guessing it's these. Looks about right. Okay, so we've got those and we need some grub screws. Okay, so we've got 4 grub screws. Okay, we've got all our bits. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, so we've got the uni here. And we're going to put it into the large opening of the diff outdrive. Okay, so where's the big end? Okay, so that's the big end, right? It's quite obvious. Big and open. All right, so that's going to slide into here. Okay, so that should fit in snugly so that we'll get the grub screws to lock it into place. So in here, we're just going to need to open that up a bit with a sharp knife, just so this can fit in there nicely. And then again, we'll tap it with some of those screws. Okay, let's start by cleaning up. So I've just got a sharp blade and we just put it inside here. Just get rid of some of those dags from the printing process. Just going around, slicing it clean. So you can just see there how there's quite a lot of material that's come out. And then we'll just test fit it. So that should go in quite nice and smoothly. It's going in, but it's still tight. So we'll just continue doing that until we do get it to drop in. Alright, so let's just scrape it around. Right, so this popped in, still tight to the fit, but we've been able to line up those holes, which is great. Okay, so I'll leave that one there and we'll do the same thing for this one. Let's do the test fit first. Yep, okay. Do the scrape. Actually, that went in really easy. Oh, good. There we go. Okay, so we've got those two bits done. All right, so these screws here, we're just going to use these for tapping the plastic, because remember these grub screws can be fairly fragile. So as long as we can tap this in, it'll make it easier for them to go in. I've got a feeling these are not 2mm. These look a bit too thin. Let's have a look. As long as they match this. Oh no, that looks about right. Okay. Okay, we'll do the same with this one. Okay, all right, so we've got our threads all tapped. Let's see, it should be time for these grub screws now, I think. There we go. So let's pop in, I'll need my very thin Allen wrench. Okay. Make sure the top of the grub screw is flush. Okay, so we need to go that far in. Let's pop this one in here. Right, now it's starting to feel a bit tight. Let's see, maybe we need to use, no, it's about the right length there. All right, so let me just tap this in again. Maybe I need to tap it a bit tighter into the metal. I think these are too small. Let's see, this looks more like 2mm here, the thicker one. All right, let me try this. Yeah, it looks more like it. All right, here we go. Yeah, feeling much better. All right, so this is actually tapping through this CVD, and the CVD is metal, and the threads are a little bit tight. So that's why we need to cut them for these grub screws. Now, since I've been building this in short sessions, when we've been putting things away, I've probably lost some of these shorter screws. But as long as I've got the right thread, so that's the right thread, that's all that's most important, just so we can get these in there without too much resistance. Okay, so as I'm screwing this grub screw in now, it's going in much easier. Okay, so basically I want that flush. Right, that's beauty. And we'll do the other side. Okay, so that's good there. And now I'm just going to use this long screw and tap the other side as well. So these ones here are probably 1.5, 1.6 mil. Pop those back. Spin around to the other side. Okay. Okay, so we'll get these grub screws in. Alright, the last grub screw now. Just get this flush. All right, there we go. All right, so now we're on to, that's step 7, finished. Now we're on to step 8 now. Okay, so this is where we're going to get these connected up to the diff. So we'll use the solid axle here. All right, so we need that one there. We've got these axles here, which we just prepared. We need some super long grub screws. So they're the 10 mil long ones. All right, so we need 2 of those. Put that aside here. 2 big grub screws, some shims, 8 mil shims. All right, so there's one. The second one, and then the bearings. So flange bearings, 8 by 12. So they'll have these big chunky ones. Okay. All right, so I've got all our bits, let's move on. So this is step 9, preparing the lock diff. Okay, so since we're going to be using this, slide the 8 mil shim onto the output bearing support on both sides. Okay, so we'll need one of these on here. And then the bearing. And exactly the same on this side. Okay, so that looks pretty neat. All right, so bearings and shims are in. Okay. Slide the outdrive assemblies onto each end of the diff shafts. Okay. Align the empty holes. Yep, okay, so these have got holes in them. So we need to align those with the holes in this output drive here. Okay, and then we're going to use the thin Allen key to align them up. And then the long grub screws will go in to hold it in place. Okay, so let's do this. Right, that's on nicely. It's on as well. All right, let's just... Okay, so you see how the grub screw is going in? That's what we want, to make sure that all the holes are lined up. This one's not quite right. We're done wrong here. Oh, here we go. That should be right there. Okay, and that one's all lined up as well. Okay, we'll get the same screw and we'll do the same sort of thing we did with those other grub screws. And we're going to use this to cut the thread. Okay, and that's all the way to the other side. So that's cut quite nicely. We'll take that out. And once we get this out, we'll put the long grub screw in there. Okay, let's pop that in there. Okay, so we just wanted that to go inside so that the thread sort of pokes out both sides. It's sort of flush on this side. Let's just back it off a little bit. All right, so you got the same amount of meat of that grub screw on each side of that joint. Okay, good stuff. Now we'll move to this one and we'll be tapping this hole. All right, so cutting the threads. All right, so we've got a little bit of resistance here, which means it'd probably be nice to line up those holes a bit better than they were. Let's see. I'll use this drill bit to give me a bit of guidance. This side feels a little bit off for some reason. I think this hole needs to be opened up a bit. Let's just put this screw through. Alright, so I've got that through there now. Now it's a matter of just getting this to all match up. Let's try this end again. Okay, so that's all the way through now. So that hole was just a little bit narrow, so it gave a little bit more resistance than expected. Just by opening up the hole in the center there, that's made all the difference. Okay, so let's pop this in and grub screw. It should glide through quite easily now. Oh, I've got a little bit of resistance there. It's not what we want. Once we feel a little bit of resistance, these grub screws are going to start to skip. You don't want that because it's going to thread out the top. Alright, so this is going to need a little bit more persuasion, which means we're just going to put this screw back through. We'll do it up tight so it stretches the threads a little bit. Alright, so here I'm just going to, that's tight, nip it up a little bit more, and basically that's just going to stretch those threads out a bit. Screw it down a bit, screw it in again, and just nip it up a little bit again. Alright. Now hopefully that's opened up the thread enough so it's reduced the drag on that grub screw. Alright, let's try again. Alright, so this is a point where it starts feeling tight. We'll just do it really slowly. We'll ease it in there. It's almost all the way in. And we want to get it in just beyond flush, so it's the other side as well. Yep, that's it. Alright, so it's done. Don't need that anymore, pop that back. Alright, here we go. So that's step 9 finished. So these are diff all complete with the CVDs on it. Step 10 is how to prepare the diff, but since we're leaving the diff in its bag, we'll skip that totally. And then we move on to the upper lay shaft. Okay, so what do we need? We've got some gears going on here. Alright, so we've got this bit. So this is the reduction spur. And then there's this one. So that's the pinion gear. So it's got too many extensions on that. What's this one? Let's see, let's just zoom that in a bit. So that should be a bevel gear. Where's the bevel? Can't be that one. Bevel gear. Okay, well that definitely looks like this one here. Not too sure about those. Bevel must be hiding here somewhere. Let's have a look at my rest of my bits and pieces. Okay, I'll have to suss that out in a bit. Okay, so let's look for the rest of the parts. So the lay shaft. Alright, so I've got a lay shaft here. I've got this one here. We need a long grub screw, which is a 10mm again. Then we've got some shims, 5mm shims. Oops, there's one, two, Oops. All right, and the bearings. So we've got a 6x10. All right, so that looks like the 6x10. Yep. And then 5x8 by 2.5. So that'll be this little one. Okay, let's see how we go. All right, so I need to screw that into this bevel. So let's see how this goes together. That doesn't look right. No, that doesn't look right. Insert the upper lay shaft into the diff pinion gear. Okay, no, I don't think that's going to be here. That's probably the part I've lost. And then we'll have this part here. So we've got this one. This bearing slides over here. Flange first. Just needs a bit of cleaning up. And then this is meant to go on here. Okay, so just need to give this a little bit of a sand first. It's just got a little bit of an edge on it. Okay, try that again. Oh, I need to sand a bit more over here. It's just going to need a bit of scraping, I think, a bit of trimming. Okay. We're just taking a little bit of material off at a time because we don't want to overdo it. So this is just sliding on now. Okay, so that is what we want. Okay, so we'll just make sure we follow this. So next is a shim. And then the next bearing. All right, there's a shim. Next bearing. All right, and then shim again. All right, and then this is going to slide over. All right, so we'll make sure we've got the right orientation. This should slide over here. Okay, so that should be a tight fit, which it is. But it's a little bit too tight. Okay, so we're going to take off some of the materials just so it can get in there. See, where's it binding up? Towards the end here. Okay, so just scrape this back a bit. All right, let's try that. It's still pretty tight, which means there's probably a bit of material in the very center there. Okay. Alright, so I'm trying both ends of this gear and I can work out that most of the resistance is coming from this side. So we just need to concentrate and work on that to get some more material out. Okay. It's getting a little bit closer. We want to make sure that this is tight so there's no play, but we also want to make sure that it's not so tight that we won't be able to get it off again, because in the circumstance that we'll need to work on it, like replace these gears, we want to make sure that we can get these bits off. Okay, just having a bit of a look on the inside of that. Right, let's see what it feels like now. Still pretty tight, just at that point. All right, let's see if we can take off. Oh, there goes my blade. All right, so it's sliding in really nice and smoothly now. And that's from the other end where it was tight. So we'll put it on the right way around. It should just all press nice and tight there. All right, so that's perfect. Okay. All right, so that's step 13. That's minus that pinion gear, of course. All right, so we'll just keep on going as much as we can. All right, so that's over there. I need this grub screw because that's for putting the diff pinion in place later. All right, so we've got these two gears. Right, so we've got reduction, pinion, motor spur, lower lay shaft, which is this one. And then we've got some grub screws. So M3 grub screws, which are sort of chunky ones. Need 2 of those. Bearings. So there's 2 of the 6x10s. 6x10s. Oops. And then one of the 5x8s. That's this. Okay. Got all our bits. All right, so step 15 is the lower lay shaft. There's a lot of writing here, so it looks like I'm going to have to do a bit of reading. So insert the lower lay shaft into the motor spur gear. Okay, so we've got the motor spur gear here. And we needed to poke out 44 to 45 mil. Okay, so we've got a flat on this shaft. So the flat should be facing that hole for the grub screw. Now that's really tight. Okay, I'm just going to trim off this end here. Just got to adjust it to the point where we can get the shaft in there. Right, so just a bit of adjustment. Okay, it needs a little bit more. Alright, let's do a bit of scraping. It'll probably be at a point where I can't get the blade all the way in there. So if it still feels a little bit tight, I'm just going to have to use a little bit of brute force and give it a bit of a smacking. Right, so what do we want? We want 44 to 45. Alright, which means we'll need to smack it in quite far. Alright, so let's use this for a bit of gentle persuasion. Okay, let's see how far we went. Alright, so we need another 4 mil. Just want to be careful I don't slip and poke this into myself. It'd be nice if I had my little Swiss hammer. I've got one at home, but I don't have one here. Alright, so I need another 3 mil in. What else have I got that'll help me in this case? Let's try it from this end. Alright, so I can see the shaft at the base of that hole now, which is good. I need another 2 mil. Alright, so what's the best way of doing this? I might have to go and find myself a hammer. Alright, I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, here we go. We've got our vintage Hearns hammer right here. Let me just move some of this stuff out of the way because I think this is going to be a bit of brute force going on. Alright, so I'm just going to smack this a little bit. We don't only need a little bit more. Oh, I still need about 2 mil in. All right, 1 more mil. All right, that's pretty spot on. Okay, we're on about 44.5, something like that. All right, so that's perfect. All right, so there you go. That's our, I think it's a 50 or 60-year-old hammer. All right, let's move on to the next bit. All right, so we've got that lined up with the screw hole. So we're going to put the M3 grub screw into there. It's going to lock it all into place. Okay, that's locked up, I think. No, still going. Oh, that's locked up now. Okay. It's in. I don't think that's going to be spinning anywhere. Alright, we've got to be careful that I don't over tighten that because that's going to strip out the thread, but after smacking it with the 60-year-old hammer, I think it's going to be pretty permanent. Okay, so we're going to slide one of the bearings on now. 6x10 flange first. Alright, so that's this, goes over. And we go into here. That is pretty tight. Alright, so we're going to do a bit of sanding. We just want to get it to the point where this will slip on and it'll be reasonably tight. Right, so there's still a bit more to do. Alright, it's getting close. The inner race is on, but it's still got a bit of resistance, mainly from the inside, so we'll just concentrate a bit more on the inside of this collar. Alright, still can't quite press fit it on yet. Oh, almost there. All right. We want to get that flush. Right. It's almost flush. Let's see if that's going to do. Hopefully it'll be okay. Oh. Okay, let's move on to the next bit. All right, so now we've got, this is the reduction pinion gear. So there's the 3mm goes into here. Okay, I'm just going to screw that in until I've just got a little bit of the grub screw hanging out. That'll help me locate onto the flat. Okay, and then we've got a bearing on the other side. So we'll get our flange first on this 6x10. All right, so that's on. And then we'll slide this on until it's flush with the end. Okay, and then we're just going to tighten up the grub screw. So this is just temporary. Okay, and then we got, oh, not tight enough. All right, that's better. Okay, so that's step 16. That's all done. All right, now it's time to start putting it together. Okay, so from the looks of it, I think I've got an extra motor pinion and where I need an extra bevel. So I'll get that sorted out next time round, and I'll keep working on what I can. Let's see. Let's see how far I can do here. So we're onto gear mesh now. So we've got this shaft here. Okay, so we need to readjust the motor position to make sure the mesh between the motor pinion gear and the motor spur is correct. Okay, so in the back here, you're going to see that we've got the pinion that's already on the motor. And you've got a couple of screws with an eccentric in there, which is going to control the mesh. Okay, so what we're going to do, we have to press the 5x8x2. Into here. Okay, that's in. And I'm guessing I'll probably have to loosen that off. No? Am I looking at the right thing? Oh no, this goes into here. Okay, so this is where we want to get the mesh right. It feels a bit tight at the moment. Okay, so loosen both the M3 motor screws slightly so the motor can move up and down. And then press and hold the lathe shaft assembly firmly into the bearing, ensuring it's held at 90 degrees to the motor plate. Move the motor up and down until you get a touching mesh and tighten the M3 motor screw. Recheck the mesh and repeat the previous process and then until you get a nice touching mesh, but not too tight and no gap. When the lathe shaft is held at 90 degrees, make sure take your time and repeat until you get it into the right spot. And then you tighten up the motor screws again, okay? So let's grab this bigger driver, loosen these screws. Okay, so that should shift a little bit. Now that's meant to be at 90 degrees, so. Okay, so let's see, I think I've loosened it off a bit. Feels okay to me. I think, well, having a mesh tighter than loose is better. See what this feels like when it's all screwed together, I guess. Can't really tell if it's straight, and maybe a little bit too tight. Let's try this again. If I undo these motor screws again, we should get the slightest amount of movement. Tighten it up. I think I'm going to run with it and see what it's like. Feels okay. Okay, so I have that. Just actually tighten up a bit more. Okay, so that's the mesh done. All right, which means the next part is going on with the gearbox, which is going to be these components. But I think we'll leave it for this particular build session. So I just got to replace that spare motor pinion with the bevel for the diff. We'll have that ready for the next one, and then we'll continue on, and we'll start building up the gearbox. So you can see how this is already looking like the actual real F1 car, where the gearbox is going to be hanging off the back, and then we've already got the drive done. So this is the solid rear axle. We'll get a reduction here, and we've got part of the pinion done. We're just waiting for the bevel for the diff. All right, so that's been quite interesting, and we're getting closer and closer, but I think it's going to be much more visual the next time around once we get the gearbox all built up. So pretty much this bit still looks the same, but we've got all of these bits now. All right, so we've got a locked diff. We've got CVDs hanging off it, so that's going to be floating in there eventually. We've got a lot of the gearbox done, as in the internals, and then we'll have the rest of it done next time around. Okay, so thank you again for joining me for building this Grand Prix 3D car. It's been lots of fun, and I'm still looking forward to a lot more fun. We'll eventually get this all built up into running condition, and we're going to be working on the body too. I've got some ideas on making a really nice finished body. So let's see what I can come up with. But in the meantime, thanks again, and I'll see you next time around.